With that, I will call this meeting of the Rental Housing Advisory Board of the city for the city of Oshkosh to order. I'm going to have a roll call, please.
Erickson.
Here.
Gulan.
Here.
Hutchinson. Javaltas.
Here.
Lord. Garcia. Ernst.
Here.
And Hutchinson.
Here.
Okay. That will bring us then to approval of the minutes from the February meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. A second.
Any discussion?
My name is spelled wrong. Not a big deal, but there's an N in there between the I and the S. It should be Hutchison, not Hutchinson.
Throughout or on a particular page? Or...
No, pretty much throughout.
Anything else? Any other discussion on the minutes? Oh, I skipped one part. So I would entertain then a move to, or a vote to approve last meeting's minutes with the caveat that the spelling of Mr. Hutchison's name be corrected in the minutes.
Okay.
Aye.
Gulan.
Aye.
Hutchison.
Aye.
Javaltas.
Aye.
Lord. Ernst.
Aye.
Oh boy.
Is that passing?
Yes, the motion carried.
All right. And I jumped over an item on the agenda. My bad, but we have. Are there any citizen statements this afternoon?
Yes, there is.
Was that an affirmative?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Matt Nicholson. I live at 906 Winnebago in Oshkosh. I am a landlord here in town. Concerning the, I'm at this meeting concerning the tenant bill of rights. Been written and unedited. Several comments concerning this. I feel like the preamble is very inflammatory towards landlords. I am a landlord that has successful relationships. The majority of the relationships that I have with my tenants are successful, and it is not something that helps me if I'm having a bad relationship with a tenant. It's not financially productive. It's very stressful when things are going bad between me and the tenant. But as this preamble is written, it makes it sound like I'm the bad guy, and I have a big problem with that because I consider myself a decent landlord, as do several of my tenants that I've had for multiple years. And I'm calling out this preamble to be removed completely because it is not fair to have landlords portrayed in this situation. I have discussed the matter with Lori Palmieri and also Lindsay, I'm sorry, I forget your last name. I've been in contact with several other landlords, and I've also spoken with Matt Mugarauer on the council, and this is something that I'm going to become more involved with to get this preamble removed. It is not in the landlord's interest to evict tenants, and I know that that's one of the things on the preamble about, unnecessary eviction. I'm all for and would rather work with a tenant to keep them in their house and continue to get paid and do so significantly. I'm also involved in judgment collections and very much find working on resolving a problem rather than just hammering on somebody to be much more financially productive and much less stressful. It's in our interest to work with our tenants proactively, and I've spent a lot of time, not only in my own business, working with tenants, but also helping guide other younger landlords in general, to try to mediate their situation. See what else? Some other things. There's been some comments made, and one I can go to the preamble, but I'm going to add with this about landlords pushing back against the city and causing situations that become harmful for tenants. During the inspection program, the city argued about having local control versus the state. How about landlords having private property control versus the city? And actually for tenants too. The problem with the inspection program was that for landlords, of course, that issue was obvious. But there were tenants there that did not want to have an inspector go through their place. There was one specific incident that there were 4 roommates, and 3 of them specifically did not want the city to come through their property, and the city still came through because the 4th tenant allowed them in, and it created a lot of problems along the way, both for the city and for the landlord. It ended up becoming a lawsuit where the landlord had to sue the city for communication issues. One question that I have is, what is the purpose of this board? What is the actual mission statement for this board? On the December 9th, 2020 minutes on page 4, Chairman Ernst said that he had no specific ideas for policies. I find that concerning. It really kind of just makes me wonder, what is the purpose of this board? There's also talks about vulnerable people, having a tough time. I would love to see some statistics as for vulnerable people. How many of them are there? What kind of communication has come from them? I would love to, I am now demanding to see those statistics to find out what those issues are. If there are issues, I would love to be part of the resolution to help find ways to resolve those issues. And also, those specific examples of that. There was also talk in the preamble of actual threats, and actually also in some of the minutes of threats against tenants for talking with the city. I'm demanding for specific examples of actual threats. One of the things that I do as a landlord deals with my tenants. First of all, in my ad, I specifically have looking for tenants that want to have a positive relationship with their landlord. Some of the other things that I do as a landlord that's not required of me to show good faith in relations with my tenants who are my customers, I put the City of Oshkosh Inspection Department phone number right in the top right corner of my lease. In the top left corner is the DATCP website phone number. DATCP is basically Wisconsin's consumer protection website. And I do this in good faith to my tenants to give them an opportunity that if things break bad between us, they have some positive steps that they can take to take care of themselves. It's a show of good faith on my part to let them know that I'm interested in having a positive relationship with them. For the preamble and for the Bill of Rights, it seems like we already have this established. The majority of the Bill of Rights for tenants' rights seem to come from state statute. And DATCP already has the tenant's rights and responsibilities right on their website. So instead of spinning our wheels and spending a whole bunch of time with the city that I'm paying for through my taxes, why don't we just give out the tenant's rights and responsibilities and give that to our tenants? They already have it. I'm already giving it to them. Why don't we promote DATCT's website and say, here, if you're having a problem with your landlord, then this is what some of the things that you can go do. That's all that I have.
Thank you, Mr. I'm happy to. So before I respond, let me just summarize your points and make sure I've got like the bullet points down. So you object to the preamble in the Tenant Bill of Rights because of inflammatory language, even though that language was amended coming out of the last meeting. Second, you said
still inflammatory.
What?
Excuse me, can I make a point of order? Can I make a point of order? My understanding is that things that are on the agenda cannot be brought in citizen statements. Is that correct? Because the Bill of Rights is on our agenda.
This is Alan talking. I think they can be brought up at citizen statements, but you make a good point. This is the agenda, and I think we've got a lot of people in attendance for items before that. So maybe we could set this to the side until we hear the presentations, and then we can get to the Bill of Rights that's already on the agenda.
I have no problem. Otherwise, I'm prepared to respond now, but we do have several guests and other speakers, so I can respond now briefly, or we can get to those other items. Any preferences?
I think to respect our guest presentation time, we can be for going ahead with their presentations and then coming back to Mr. Mickelson.
Okay, so hear from Lucier with AdvoCap, and then Erica Sanders from the Fair Housing Council, and then I will come back to respond to Mr. Mickelson. So Ms. Scheer, if you would, please.
Good afternoon. My first opportunity, I think, to talk to you about what's going on with WERA. And if you're familiar, WERA is Wisconsin Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and it came into the state of Wisconsin in the amount of approximately $389 million compared to $30 million that RAP was. In this particular funding, what we're able to do is we're able to help people with their current rent that's due, prepaying rent that's due, utilities that are past due, and current utilities that are due. Along with this, AdvoCap is doing 4 counties. They're doing Fond du Lac, Winnebago, Green Lake, and Calumet. And Emergency Services, Inc., ESI, is also doing the entire state. So I have 2 different reporting. Some, when I drill down into specifics about Winnebago County, I'm able to get far more into it. But as ESI does not, it's not as specific about the people and their income. But I can give you a quick rundown. Since the beginning of this, in our territory, we have spent $1,017,654, of which $603,618 has come into Winnebago County. So approximately 59.8% of the funds have come into Winnebago County. It breaks down, and I'm going to give you the combined total of both what AdvoCap has paid and what ESI has paid. The current utilities, $929 to help 5 households. Past due utilities is $21,614 to help 35 households. And this could go back as far as March of last year, of 2020. So we could pay up to 15 months of assistance, and that would be in the form of paying utilities for 15 months and paying rent for 15 months, just to give you kind of a bigger picture. We've helped lot assistance, meaning we've helped people with mobile homes in Winnebago County. We've helped 5 people with a total of $5,669,000. Past due lot has only helped 3 households for a total of $1,927. Late fees is an allowable cost. I am pleased to say that most landlords we dealt with were able to forgive late fees or minimize or reduce late fees once they knew that we were going to be paying up a lot of arrearages and could pay up to 3 months prepaid rent. We have paid, for the purposes of helping 46 households, $10,552 to landlords. The most I saw was that we paid $2,100 to one landlord who was not willing to make any allocations on that. The rental assistance, meaning current rent and prepaid rent, we have helped, prepaid being up to 3 months. So if we were now paying April rent, because it's the 14th, we could pay April, May, June, and July. And we are doing this, especially if we're also paying arrearages. And that's, again, an efforts to help landlords. The rental assistance that we have prepaid is 144 households for the tune of $304,570. Past due rent, the total amount of households we have helped is 121. I cannot tell you that that's not a duplicate number of the people that we've also paid current and forward rent for. We have helped 121 households with $253,136. And security deposits, we have paid $5,221. It is a grand total of $603,618, which, as I said, is 59.7% of the total dollars spent by AVOCAP in the 4 counties have come to Winnebago County. We have found this week that we have had 3 landlords, and I don't know that they are located in Winnebago County or one of the others, that have asked for past due rent and prepaid rent, and have those checks have been issued and have in fact evicted their tenants during this time. The state is now on top of that and requesting those funds back. We also have 2 landlords who are refusing any assistance with this program. And we try to encourage them. We try to make this right, but they have the choice. But a majority of the people that we're working with are getting their rent paid, and the landlords are accepting that and working with their tenants. So we know that this program is likely to go through the end of the year. We also understand that there is another stimulus package and more funds coming, to the fact that they're anticipating this could go, assistance going to renters could go into 2024. So they're predicting a long term of this. Next package is very likely to help homeowners. Also coming down. And so far, we have not had a lot of need or request for mortgage assistance, but they're anticipating some assistance going to be available through the state of Wisconsin. As I look at our areas more closely, I realize that we're not the highest spending area, and for good reason. Employment in our area has increased in Winnebago County just ever so slightly during the COVID. I think it was like 0.3% or whatever. But a lot of people are working. And we noticed that Fond du Lac was the lead with in the state in regards to the number of people who actually 3.5% more people were employed from March through November of last year. So we know that manufacturing is still doing pretty well. And we're fortunate that we're not seeing a lot of or as many households as some areas are. But I'm the first to say that the bagel place across the street from us has been closed for a year, and those 7 people haven't been employed. So we know it's affecting people. I don't want to minimize that, but as a whole, I don't think we're we're need as much funds as other areas of the state of Wisconsin. So having us draw down from one pot versus getting an allocation for our counties, I think is working out very appropriately. And I think that's the way we're going to see things in the future. So that's what I have. I should mention to you that utilities are gas and electric. We cannot pay the city water bills, unfortunately. But we do, through AdvoCap, have other funds that we are trying to help people with those. And we have other programs that for people to help talk them through what options they may have, what resources we can connect them to for the people who are at high crisis or at vulnerable populations. So is there any questions I can answer for you on that?
Lou, can you hear me?
I
It's
can.
Don? Oh, great. It's working this time. I appreciate it. Do you have something, that you can send me by email that I can distribute by social media, by email? So, a synopsis of this. So, as usual, it's a lot of people aren't aware of things. And do you have something like that? Or a news release or, that I can
It's on
distribute?
our website, Don. We have
Okay.
the press release and the frequently asked questions there. If you're not asking
Okay.
about specific numbers.
So I could just post that link then.
Sure.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
have a pre-screen on there. We have some other information. We are surprised that we are not, back in the RAP days, it was crazy. We had 400 people on a wait list. Right now, I have less than 20 people on our wait list.
Wow.
And so between ourselves and ESI, I think people are getting served in a relatively quick manner. And I think that's good. We certainly appreciate the landlords who are working with this program. And, the whole purpose of this is to prevent homelessness and to keep people stably housed. And we know, that's the crux for all of us is your life is much easier when you're not worried about where you're going to sleep tomorrow night. So this has, like I said, most of the landlords have worked with us very closely and have been willing to reduce or eliminate their late fees. But we are unable to put a cap on it. We were trying to keep it under $100 a month. And as I said, most people were willing to do that. We've had a few that insist upon some pretty high rates that are there. So.
Can I ask one more question? On the original RAP program, did you have enough funds to take care of everybody?
We were able to continue to draw down. We ran out of time before we ran out of money.
And this time, is that situation sounds like it's going to be even, you're not going to run out of money. This runs through December 31st. Do you think the same thing's going to happen this time, that there's going to be enough resources for anybody that's in need?
What I'm finding is that the unknown to me is how much is owed in utilities, because, the rent seems to be going quite quickly and routinely. Again, we're not spending ridiculously high amounts here. But I believe the utilities paid out the 5 larger utility companies $1 million in one draw, and that helped 1,700 households, which
Wow.
was an average of about $635, if I remember correctly, per household, which I did not think was a ridiculous number. So people have not had to pay utilities for 18 months. But we know tomorrow that's done.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a lot of people who are scrambling. I also know that Energy Services is working specifically and directly for people who have applied for energy services who may not be renters and who may not be eligible for this program. Just in general, they're paying out sometime yet this month to the larger 5 companies. Now, of course, I think it's the city of Menasha has their own utilities. We can certainly pay for those. We can help people with LP and oil. This is just not limited to the larger utility companies, but, we can do that. So it is getting the name out. It is getting the word out that people can have assistance. I think the Landlord Association in Winnebago County has done a great job of getting that word out. A lot of tenants have contacted us and said their landlords encourage them to apply. So that's great. We're certainly doing the best we can with this. I also want to mention that I can only serve the numbers. We served 174 people with the dollars that AVOCAP spent. So AVOCAP spent $612,000 on 174 people, of which 104 were in Winnebago County. 79% or 79 of the 104 people were at 30% or less of county median income. So a majority of the people getting this assistance are the people who are earning less than 30% of county median income. 22% were between 30 and 50, 3% were 50%, 80%. So, you know, we are certainly helping the people who are the most vulnerable and who are the lowest income in our area by a huge margin. I cannot tell you that's the same for ESI, but of course for ESI, you must be eligible for energy assistance, and that number is also below 80% of county.
Are you expecting much happen after tomorrow, after the moratorium is off? Are you expecting a lot of phone calls, or what are you expecting?
And what I know is I never predict this well.
Okay.
I never know, right? But I think the
Yeah.
utilities are working with energy services. They're aware that this money is available.
Okay.
And, you know, but again, some of the local ones are not as interested in working with this program. It's fascinating to me. And again, when the state gets this kind of money, it's you know, it's federal dollars here to help people in the state of Wisconsin. I'm glad that we can help who we can help. But I have no way of predicting how many people are behind in utilities at all. I just
Okay.
don't.
Thank you for all those stats. I appreciate that.
I think they're fascinating. I mean,
I do too.
again, I just don't know how much of this is really happening. But this is, I forget when we started this exactly. I believe we've been doing it for 6 weeks at least, if not 8. So this is small numbers compared to what we were doing in RAP. And of course, if people have been affected longer term, we do take in consideration that their RAP paid some of their rent. You know, that's all accounted. They have to serve us with a rent summary of how much was due, how much was paid. So people are not double dipping on that. And so, you know, I do appreciate the cooperation from the landlords who are interested in keeping tenants housed. And we know there's other people being evicted for other reasons, and that's not about people who are just trying to make
Did you say how many landlords used it? It was 174 households. With how many landlords that made up?
I don't have a separate list of that. The reports are they're harder to pull down that way, because even though we're putting it in, to ask for those kind of aggregate numbers is a HIPAA thing. We can't state. If I specifically said how much did you pay ABC, they would ask me why I needed to know that. So
And then I didn't quite hear, you said 2 landlords refused any assistance, and then you said there was a certain number that took assistance but then evicted anyway, so they're going to get in trouble. How many landlords was that?
3. And I don't know that they were all from Winnebago County. You know, we have some large landlords that are covering all of our territory and others. So I don't know. 2 of the names I didn't recognize at all. So I'm not even sure where they were. But you know, when you collect 9 months rent, 3 forward, and you still put the person on the street, that's fraud. You know, it should be paid back.
But when they went to, I know you don't know this, but you know, to be evicted, you have to go in front of a judge, and they grant the writ of eviction. Either they grant it or they don't. They go with the landlord. When the tenant came in and said, "Hey, wait a minute, we got my rent paid through this assistance," how did they still get evicted?
Well, Don, you and I both know not all landlords or not all tenants know their rights.
Right.
I get a note from my landlord says, "I want you out tomorrow." If I'm not willing to, if I don't know my rights,
Yeah.
I believe you and I move out. You know.
Do you think they didn't come to the court date? Or I heard from one person this week that said, and I said, "There's something I'm not hearing here." You know, that they said, I think one of those 3 I heard from And they said that yeah, I got it paid for, and I'm still getting evicted. And I said, "Are you sure what you have in your hand is an eviction notice? You know, did you go?" And they said, "No, we didn't have a court hearing." I said, "You have to have a court hearing to get evicted." So I think I
Well,
heard from one of those three. You know.
you may very well. And like I said, you and I know that you have to go to a court date. And we know that a 5-day notice means you don't have to be out in 5 days. You have 5 days to cure.
Yeah.
But when a landlord, I mean, we also know there are landlords who knock on the door and say, I want you out. I want you
Yeah.
out now. And, you know, people do, they move.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but it was just three, so okay.
In our
But
territory,
that's-
yes. And, but again, I'm, because of what we do, it is a very open and giving program, if you will. I mean, we are trying to keep people stably housed. I mean, that is the
Yeah.
goal of this. And so a lot of it is self-declaration, as you know. And so
Mhm.
sometimes when people are signing some of these forms, we question it because, you know, not our first rodeo. But we are instructed that if they sign their attestation, if the landlord signs off on this, we're to believe that. You know, we're just doing this as an agent for the state, because the state is responsible for the payments. And they are monitoring this, and they are staying on top of this. And so I'm happy for that purpose. I mean, it makes me feel that we're doing our job right and they are doing their job right.
Well, I just hope at the end of June, obviously in the media, we're hearing this tsunami of coming evictions, but obviously with programs like this, hopefully that does not happen. So.
I believe that there will be places in the state of Wisconsin that it will be rampant. As I said, I think we're finding a lot of people are employed here. You know, and I'm not telling you household incomes haven't decreased, but with kids back to school, you know, people are still working.
So you're saying people that might be getting evicted that wouldn't qualify for your program?
I'm saying I'm not sure it's many. I think they're looking at statewide statistics. I don't think they're looking just at us. And I think we're blessed in this area not to have as much need as they are in some of the other areas.
Okay. Okay.
North of us, they have a waiting list of 300 people. And they've got a lot of people. I mean, they just have a lot of different things going on. It's just, I think people who know about us are getting the assistance they need. And I'm just happy that we're not flooded right now.
Yeah.
Could sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
I've just heard from a couple of folks. So the process to apply for this, right, is to fill out the pre-screen application on your website. Is that right?
You can, and I'm not, I think ours is working now. It wasn't working on Monday. So you know, we've had that checked out. It's just a way for people who are doing this at midnight, because we're not open 24/7, get started, and then somebody will call them back with that information. They're welcome to call us our ESI. I think ESI is working around the clock. I think they are, in fact, 24 hours, open 24 hours. And so they have to, the process would be is they have to answer those questions sooner or later, but they have to apply for energy assistance no matter what. Everything goes through that system to be paid.
Okay.
And either one of us can pay past due utilities, past due rent, and forward rent as necessary.
Okay. And I did just try clicking on the link on your website and it seemed to stall out. So I don't think it's working, but.
Thanks for checking it. I will double check with our IT people again. There seems to be a missing link, if you will, so I will double check.
Question was also about the application. So, are there any other questions or concerns from this year? What can we do as a board to best aid you in your mission this year?
Again, I just say keep people informed that, you know, they should at least try this platform. The nice thing about this is that they need to be eligible for 1 month, meaning that we only check the income for 1 month and we can prepay up to 3. That's important because a lot of the people that we are, we've gotten calls from are employed, but they either somebody in their household got COVID, and I've had a coworker do this. One of their children showed up positive, so they had a quarantine, and shortly, just as about 2 weeks was going to come up, another child got it, so they had to stay home literally for 5 weeks. And they weren't even the ones that were sick, but that changes the income for people. So if that is the month and the period of time we're looking at, we can help them pay their rent that month. And we can say, let's pay an additional month because you're gonna, you couldn't pay your car payment, you couldn't do these other things. And we have that flexibility to help people with another 30 or 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months forward. And we're trying to do that as much as we can in order to help people stabilize and not find themselves living paycheck to paycheck right out of the box again. So just, tell people if people call. I know the utility companies are certainly working with this. So when the moratorium hits, I'm sure they have included, I shouldn't say that. I know my local utility did include a statement with our bill and said, if you're finding it difficult, make these payments. I think a lot of agencies have it on their website. Here's what you need to do. So I just encourage spreading the word.
Is your utility company Wisconsin Public Service or another?
I live in Waupun.
Oh, okay. The
My
reason, and I
husband,
think, and a lot of people don't get their, like me, I don't get my bill. I pay like 3 or 4 utility bills a month, and it's all online, so I don't get that notice, So I hopefully it wasn't included on anything I got online, so that would have been nice. So I would have seen that. I'll have to look around for it.
on my state meetings, they have certainly been talking about encouraging how to do outreach that way, because they know that a lot of people, if they're behind in their utilities, and so they were certainly trying to get the utilities to reach out.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Scheer? All right. We thank you very much, and if you'd be interested in
Thank you so much, Lou. Yeah.
Always, Don. Happy to share.
If you'd be interested in speaking with us, or if you'd be interested in speaking with us in June, we would of course love to have you.
Okay. I'll have 2 months of updates, so that will be valuable, and I'll use the same format if you found it useful.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to the next item on the agenda then, Fair Housing Council presentation, and for that we have Ms. Erica Sanders. So Ms. Sanders, would you tell us who you are and a little bit about what you're about today?
Sure. First, can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Erica Sanders. I'm the Director of Program Services for the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. I'm so glad to be able to speak with you as part of your meeting today. Some of your faces are familiar to me. I presented to this group, gosh, maybe 3 years ago now. Time is a little bit of a blur. But some of you are unfamiliar to me, so I'm glad to meet you in this fashion and tell you a little bit about the Fair Housing Council and what we do. Overall, what I'd like you to take away from our time together today is simply that the Fair Housing Council exists to be a resource to you. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and some resources that you can access through our website or from our staff. So the Fair Housing Council in Milwaukee has been around since 1977. We serve the whole state. We have a satellite office in Madison that serves, South Central Wisconsin. And we, from 2002 on, have had a satellite office in Appleton. Unfortunately, near the beginning of the pandemic, we lost our lease in Appleton for our office space there. And again, because of the pandemic, weren't able to look at new office space in person, but it is 100% our intention to have an office in the Fox Valley ASAP. And thanks to the way things are looking and greater vaccinations, I'm really hoping we can go out and look at office space soon. But together we form a single private nonprofit organization, and we conceive of ourselves as a civil rights enforcement agency. So we enforce all the laws that pertain to someone's civil rights in the housing market, whether it's in home mortgage lending, sales, rentals, appraisals, homeowners insurance, you name it, virtually any aspect of the housing market. Our mission has two parts. We work to combat illegal housing discrimination across the state of Wisconsin, and we work to help create and maintain racially and economically integrated housing patterns. Because as I'm sure you're all aware, communities across Wisconsin remain somewhat racially and economically segregated. I think Darlene shared with you, or will share with you at some point, a flyer, one of our basic flyers about the fair housing laws we enforce. And I don't really want to go into the law today, but perhaps, we could schedule a time if you're interested at a future meeting, maybe when we could even be together in person, and I can talk a little bit more in detail about the law at that point. But today I just really want you to know about some of our services. We take complaints from people who feel like their rights have been violated in the housing market, and we help people pursue a legal remedy if that's what they choose to do. We're not attorneys. We don't have attorneys on staff or provide legal representation for clients, but we work to help ensure that our clients are aware of what their rights are, what the different paths are if they choose to seek out a legal remedy, and so forth. So we can help people, for example, file administrative complaints with agencies like the Wisconsin Equal Rights Division, or we can help people file complaints with various city attorneys' offices that enforce local fair housing ordinances or similar local administrative agencies. We can also help people file complaints with the federal government at HUD. And we can help people pursue a judicial remedy if they choose to file a lawsuit in state or federal court. As I said, we're not attorneys, we don't provide legal representation, but we work with a panel of cooperating attorneys who've agreed to work with our clients on an affordable basis. So that's one part of what we do. We also do a lot of education and outreach to both housing consumers and housing providers. We give dozens and dozens of presentations every year to social service agencies, to homeless services agencies, community-based groups, neighborhood groups, religious congregations, school groups, and we provide training to housing providers as well. We also do a lot of technical assistance on the telephone to both housing consumers and housing providers who call us with general questions about fair housing issues. One of the things I wanted to make you aware of is that our website has 3 fairly new resources that I encourage you to take a look at and to share with your networks as you feel appropriate. First and foremost, as of the end of 2020, we have a brand new fair housing guide for owners and managers of rental property on our website. It's a fairly comprehensive overview of fair housing laws and fair housing issues faced by people who manage rental housing. So take a look at that, share it as you wish. The second fairly new resource on our website is a resource guide for responding to hate incidents in housing. As I'm sure you're all aware, hate incidents have been on the rise across the country. Wisconsin is no exception. And so the resource guide on that topic provides us all with sort of concrete steps or actions we can take to make sure that hate isn't welcome in our communities. It's important to us for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that according to FBI statistics released in 2020 about 2019 hate crime data, about 1 in 5 hate crimes happens in or near someone's place of residence. making it the single most common place hate incidents occur. And when hate happens in housing situations, it can violate criminal statutes, of course, but it can also violate fair housing laws and interfere with someone's civil rights to, enjoy the property they've legally rented or purchased. Third and finally, the other resource I want to make sure you're aware of is that we have a newish, I think it was completed about a year ago, a year and a half ago. We have a housing search app that's free. People can download on tablets or smartphones. And this app allows people to enter data about units they look at or learn about during the course of a housing search. So they can log a whole bunch of information on this app about the size of units, the cost of units, where they're located. It has a mapping function so people can actually look at where units are in relation to one another. It allows side-by-side comparisons so people can look at 2 or 3 or 4 different apartments and compare them based on factors like cost and size and so forth. And the app also contains a whole lot of basic fair housing information, including, if someone does experience housing discrimination in the course of a housing search, it gives users information about where to seek help. So I urge you to take a look at those things. Our website is fairhousingwisconsin.com. I'm trying to put it in the chat, but I'm having some technical difficulties, so I apologize. But again, fairhousingwisconsin.com. We also share a lot of our information or information more broadly about fair housing issues on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so forth. We post information about, significant fair housing cases that have occurred across the country, emerging fair housing news, for instance. Some of you may have seen recently that just this week, the new Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development issued some new guidance on fair housing topics. So following us on social media is just a good way to stay on top of that. And just keep informed about various new developments in the world of fair housing. So with that, I have covered what I want to, but again, I really urge you to think of us as a resource, call us with any questions. Oh, that reminds me, this is on our website, of course, but the best way to get in touch with us most quickly is our toll-free statewide number, which is 1-877-647-3247. And then you're always welcome to contact me directly with any questions you have about our services or our resources. Darlene, I'm sure, can share my contact information with everyone, but I'll tell you, my number is 414-315-3771, and I'm happy to have more specific conversations about our work if you wish. So thank you.
Erica, I think you're required to, somehow the city is required to put on one fair housing seminar a year. Is that correct? Like in our area?
I think what you're referring to, Don, is that historically we've had a CDBG contract with with the city of Oshkosh, and as part of that, yes, we have conducted a training for rental owners and managers. That didn't happen during the pandemic. Instead, we helped, or Oshkosh Funding helped us develop that rental managers for housing guide that I referenced instead. But I have every expectation that as soon as it's safe for us to gather in person again, we will hold those seminars once again.
Okay. If as a landlord association wanted to host a training day and have you come, we're a nonprofit, would you charge us to do that?
Typically, yes, unless we do charge for our private trainings. The trainings we don't charge for are those funded by CDBG entities. So I think if we were to conduct a training for an apartment association and its membership and try to make it free to those members, we would need approval from our CDBG monitor at Oshkosh for that to happen. But in general, when we conduct trainings for, let's say, a specific management company, ABC management company or whatever, we do charge for those.
The reason why I asked, there's quite a bit of talk, one of the having more of education and training or a rental housing day or things like that. So would there be a way that you could incorporate like the one that we missed into that at no charge or something like that into a rental housing seminar day or something like that? Is that possible?
I think I'd need to know more specifics about what you're suggesting. I mean,
Okay.
the funding that we would have used last year to conduct an in-person seminar was instead utilized to create the fair housing guide. So
Okay.
it's not as though we have money to play with to do something else. You know what I mean? But it's absolutely something I'd be open to discussing with you separately. How we could make something work.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of talk, and they've always gone over very well. And I know that fair housing was part of seminars in the past, but we've only had 2 or 3 in the last 20 some years. And I think that would be a crucial part of a rental housing day.
Yeah, I mean, fair housing is a critically important component of what any owner and manager of rental housing needs to understand. So we're in total agreement on that. I think we would just have to hash out, the details of how to make that work and how we can do so in a way that makes sure you're getting the information you need and we are able to support our staff time in doing so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Sanders? All right, then. Thank you very much, Ms. Sanders, for your time and for the information. I'm sure we'll be sure to check out that information on your website, which again is fairhousingwisconsin.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much. I hope we have an opportunity to meet again before too long. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. So that wraps us back around to citizen statements. Before I respond to Mr. Mickelson, did any other board members have comments, questions for him, for Mr. Mickelson?
I just have one comment. If he's interested in finding out what we do, he can read our minutes. He can attend our board meetings like he did today. And so I think he sort of learned today that there are vulnerable people in the community and got some statistics in that regard. So attending board meetings or going on Facebook, I think our meetings are going to be, if they haven't already been placed on Facebook.
They're on YouTube as well.
Yeah. So that's really a good way to find out what we do. And I think it would answer many of the questions that he had. And I guess that's all I wanted to say about that.
And thank you. All right. So to begin, the first comment was that the language of the resolution, particularly the preamble, is inflammatory and this won't help relationships. That was the language was amended at the end of the last meeting. So the type of language which was argued unfairly, blames all landlords, was dealt with in the last meeting. So that language was changed to be more specific or, better qualified to reflect the situation. I don't know why the preamble or the resolution prevents landlords from being able to work with tenants, or would increase the likelihood that landlords would want to evict tenants. I think the risk, and if, as you say, Mr. Mickelson, a lot of this information is already there, right? In the term, like you say, Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, like solves now, for instance, or is dealing with things now. I mean, I think as Ms. Scheer spoke to, a lot of people don't know that information, and it becomes meaningful for, the city to say, yes, there are these resources provided. Even if you do that in your like rental agreements and things like that, I would suggest probably not typical of most rental agreements in town. In fact, I remember at the farmers market, I guess it was 2 years ago now when we were booth out, I had information about the inspection ordinance and about Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection, which I offered to folks who told me they were landlords. I said, oh, here, give these to your tenants. And I got laughed at and they walked away. So even if some individuals are promoting these things, which is very good in those cases, I think generally the word is not out. Next, you bring up the rental inspection ordinance. Yes, Mr. Davis.
I hate to interject, but we actually have the tenant bill of rights on the agenda, and it's kind of getting, citizen statements is blending into it, and maybe we could get through the and get to that so we could all participate in the discussion, not just concentrate on responding to Mr. Mickelson under citizen
Sounds
statements.
Good. I'm fine with that. That would bring us then to inspections updates.
Thank you. I believe you got a brief memo regarding, there was a question at the last meeting about complaints that we've received in 2020 and last year. And Mr. Cable, housing inspector, is on the line. You can see his memo right there, and be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Cable about the status of inspections? Not clarified in the memo.
Where's the memo, please?
Right after the fair housing. Handout. I think there's a number 21 on the bottom. At least.
It's in the big packet. Like the document, or the late whatever it's called page, not just the regular minutes.
I don't have it for some reason.
Let me read it real quick.
Thank you.
There were 60 tenant complaints in 2020 with 323 violations. That is an average of 5.3 violations per complaint. They are usually issues of smoke, CO detectors not working, or issues related to plumbing, electrical, handrails, guardrails, or windows and screens. So 60 complaints in 2020 and 323 violations. I think that was the question that the board had at the last meeting.
Questions, comments, discussion on that update?
I do have a question about the process, because I had a tenant talk to me about something. So when somebody puts in a complaint and it's inspected, and then the landlord does something to fix it, does some sort of receipt or something in writing have to be presented to the city? Because in this situation, the woman called the city and said it wasn't fixed. And she said, oh, the landlord just called and said it was fixed. And she said, no, it's not fixed. So I just wanted to kind of confirm what the process is in the complaint department.
Hello, everyone. This is Casey Cable, the housing inspector. So typically we get pictures sent to us, or we do re-inspections to verify that items are fixed.
Okay, it didn't happen in this case, but it was a couple of years ago, so maybe things have changed since this happened. So I just wanted to get that clarified. So I'm glad that you're requiring pictures or re-inspections when a landlord says that something's been fixed. Thank you.
Any other questions on inspections? We'll move on then to the next item, evictions updates.
I do have a question. Can we get some further definition as to the 323 violations? You know, how did those break out for the usual?
I believe you're out of order.
If there was a question, I'm asking a question.
Question of the board, sorry.
Hey, Don, can you ask my question, please?
I'm sorry, Matt. It's a question of the board right now, so we'll just continue on with the board meeting.
I'll ask it then. How did the violations break down? I think was the question.
Mr. Cable, do we have a way to break that down?
We don't have a way to break that down. We'd have to look at every case and list it out.
But in general, those they tend to be things like smoke and CO2 detectors, windows, handrails, right? Those types of things.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
It's just mostly safety issues.
Could you repeat that, Linda? I'm sorry.
I just said it was mostly safety issues, which is really important.
Yes.
Correct.
Moving on then to evictions update.
I can share if you'd like, since I pulled this data together. So I think in the packets has data since 2016 that we've been collecting. These are, this is publicly available data that's pulled from CCAP. These are all of the formal eviction filings that are logged with the courts for Winnebago County. So let me pull up my spreadsheet here. So for the month of March in 2021, there were a total of 33 evictions filed. So again, this doesn't necessarily mean that they were, it doesn't say, you know, what side the case ultimately went with, but they were at least filed with the courts. So that's pretty much in line with the last couple of months. The month of February was 33, January was 47. Typically the average for the month of March between 2016 to 2019 was 42 evictions. So about on par, slightly lower average for the month of March. So that brings us, I did have, I think, I forget when, there were a few evictions filed when I pulled this data last week, I believe, for April. So that brings us to a total of 130 evictions filed for the year so far.
So these are just evictions filed. Do we know how many of these actually were ordered against the tenant and where the tenant actually had to evict?
I don't have that off the top of my head right now. That would take going through actually each individual case in CCAP and to see what the final ruling was. But I can see if I can pull that for our next meeting, if that's helpful.
I know you don't
That-
know this off the top, about how many of those would you say were Oshkosh? You're thinking 50, 60%?
Yeah, and I'd have to look at that map that we pulled together, Don. I don't know if you were at that last meeting for the eviction prevention group, but I'd say the majority are city of Oshkosh, but there are clusters kind of in, obviously, Neenah, Menafta area, a couple in Amro, Winneconne. But yeah, I would say we're seeing clusters kind of around campus area, wherever there's rental housing in the city.
Sure, sure. I got the idea that it was Winnebago County was about 60% of them were Oshkosh is what I looked at it one time before.
Yeah.
Okay. What I was surprised when I looked at evictions, I kind of looked at them, trying to look at them closely. There's quite a few that were actually looked like family members evicting people from their own household. They were the same name on them. It was kind of, I didn't know people really went through that process for eviction, that to actually remove people from their actual residence inside the residence, So I found that interesting.
Yeah, there's probably some nuances that we'd have to look into.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussions on eviction data?
I
Seeing
just want to, now the moratorium's off June 30th. Is that correct, Tim? I think the
Yes.
moratorium's off June 30th. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
That'll take us then to the next discussion item on median income.
Yes, this was a question that the board had at the previous meeting, so we're just providing this information as to what we have regarding median incomes. And you can see it's based on the number of persons in the family, and they break it down based on percentage of county median income. And as Ms. Shear was indicating, a lot of the cases that they're dealing with are, say, at the 30% of county median. That's an extremely low income limit. And then you can see 50, 60, and 80% of county median income. So that gives you a kind of a range or a breakdown by those county median income limits. So I guess, again, it's by size of the family and which there's different programs for different income categories. Is a point of information.
Mr. Lord, did you have questions or comments on that data?
No, I don't.
Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Davis. We'll move on to our social media update.
I guess that would be Casey is in attendance and he's been posting information that maybe without an echo.
Yep. I did post some information regarding the Fair Housing Wisconsin. Some information I was passed along. The AdvoCap, I definitely think we should post things about the WIRA and whatever. I can try to put their website out on the Facebook page. People can look at that, and then I guess any other suggestions people have, just let me know so I can post those items.
I think AdvoCap is a good idea. Fair housing. We discussed posting our meetings once those are available as well. Does anyone have any other ideas right now or suggestions?
Maybe with the city's housing study, once that public survey is out, that would be a good place to post it.
Yes, we can do that.
I'll be bringing this up at other business as well, but if and when we are out at the farmers market this year, we'll be posting that information as well. Or we ought to.
I have a question and just maybe want some feedback. Do you think it might be a good idea to just post how many complaints the city received and how many violations? This is what was reported today. I mean, to post that. I mean, it's not specific, it's not naming anybody, but it's sort of saying that the city of Oshkosh is paying attention and responding. So that's just a thought I had. So maybe we want to have a discussion about that if we want to post that.
I think it would probably be useful for that information to be more public, be more obviously part of the discussion.
And I know we've done this in the past, but maybe just, looking at what the top violations are there resources or, quick education, pieces that we can post to help address some of those?
So people think it's a good idea?
I think it's a fine idea. Yeah.
Since we already have the data, it should be pretty easy.
Yeah, it could be a couple lines. I mean, but it's good information.
Agreed. Any other thoughts on social media? Cool. Next agenda item, affordable housing study update.
Yes, I'll start the conversation in that the city did retain RDG to work on that housing study. And we've begun contacting interested parties. I think there's a number of different ways for people to participate. A number of people on Rental Housing Advisory Board will be invited to various committees or focus groups or interviews here in April and May. My expectation is they'll finish with those interviews by the end of May, because we're hoping to have a draft of a plan in June and review that in July, so that people have an idea what we need to do to address affordable housing, or actually housing in all income categories in the city of Oshkosh. So it's underway, and the public can actually participate with a couple of different surveys we're developing, both with the city and with the consultant, in addition to the one-on-one or the group interviews.
Alan,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I get calls every week, people looking for apartments, and I haven't had a vacancy in quite a while. And I want to get a handle on our vacancy rate. Do you have a good number of how many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and even the single family homes that are available? I'm trying to get a handle of. It's obvious that our demand is outstripping our supply, but I would like to get a number, and I have a hard time doing that. And I was just wondering if you had anything like that.
The city does not have a number like that. I would love to have a number like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've never seen anything produced around here.
So we don't know. We know how many units there are, but we don't know what they are.
The only time we get a snapshot is when they do the census, where they do that, but that's once every 10 years. And unfortunately, the census for 2020, the release of that data, we learned was going to be delayed several months. So we won't even hear that until September. And that's going to be a snapshot of 2020.
Old data. Yeah.
There's a lag time there. Exactly.
Because it's obvious that our demand is outstripping our supply, and it's getting worse. And
that's what we're hearing from everybody. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I was just trying to get a number on it. I don't think people can get a number on it, So,
well,
okay.
Probably that's what the housing study will hopefully reveal some of that. Do we know how long the housing study might take? Like a year, something like that?
No, we want to have it wrapped up at the end of June, beginning of July,
Oh, okay,
2021.
good.
So I did just want to reiterate what Alan said, is that it is a housing study and not an affordable housing study, because they're supposed to be looking at all areas of housing. And I think that what Don brings up is a good point. I mean, the technical committee was being asked, what types of things should the study be looking at, and if they're not providing some vacancy rates and things of that nature, I think that they should be as part of this study. So I'm on the technical committee, and I'll bring that up.
Thank you.
I think we're in agreement that broadly, like, as much data as possible should be collected and made available for decision making within the scope of the study and the scope of the what we're paying for, right? But as we have discussed in the past, that includes a lot of is pretty comprehensive, it sounds like. So hopefully that comes out too. But that's a good specific suggestion, I think.
Mm-hmm. I've noted that. Thank you.
Anything else? Move on then to old business, the tenant bill of rights. So the proposal right now is kind of in an odd place, I think, like procedurally. Mr. Davis can kind of fill us in.
I'd be happy to. Last meeting we had a motion, but no second, so it died for a lack of a second. So it's still has not been voted on, either tabled or advanced. And I strongly recommend the Housing Advisory Board make a decision on that, just so it doesn't stay in this kind of limbo state. So that's why I'm suggesting that you'd want to take action one way or the other, just to pass it along or vote it down.
All right. Any questions about that from the board?
So we can have another vote on it? Is that what you're saying, Alan? Or
Yes.
revise it and vote or something like that?
Yes, talk to the city attorney's office, and since there was no vote, it can be put back on the agenda for action.
Okay,
Vote. So that's what I proposed under old business. I've never had an old business on this board before, but this is the first time we didn't actually have a vote on something. So that's why I had to check with the attorney's office to make sure we were following Robert's rules here.
Right. I'll use this time also to respond quickly to the rest of Mr. Mickelson's statements.
well, hold on, because I think we should resolve this first. Are we gonna put this on our agenda for next time we meet?
Well, what are our options here? We can either approve it, vote it down, or table it till next time. Is that pretty much it?
You could also amend it during the meeting and vote on it at the meeting here. It's completely within the board's purview as to how they want to deal with it. You left it as a draft. At this point, you could still wordsmith it, tweak it, or completely change entire paragraphs, and then you'd probably vote on it. I don't know if it needs to be at this meeting or a future meeting. Depends on how big the changes are, I guess. So it's kind of up to the board as to how they want to proceed. But
Okay.
I want to make sure you are aware that it hadn't been voted on one way or the other yet.
Okay. So just to summarize the changes that were proposed coming out of last time, change wording in the preamble to qualify that, like, some landlords are responsible for these problems in order to, I guess, avoid the assumption in the language, or the assumption that all landlords are responsible for these. Additionally, there was the including, I don't have it in front of me, gender identity as protected class. Is that right, Lindsay? So those were the changes to the preamble and to the actual text of the document, which I feel resolved most of the semantic objections that were brought up to it.
And I'd like to make one more comment. I thought about it today, that perhaps if we see some landlords, I mean, we're the rental housing board in the city of Oshkosh. So I think in Oshkosh is important to put in there. It just makes it more specific, saying, you know, some landlords in Oshkosh, I think is just makes it a little more specific. And I think that's important.
And if I could chime in,
Yes,
typically, I'm not the rules guy when it comes to meetings, but typically you need a motion and a second to actually talk about an item before you vote on it. So certainly answering questions about what you can and can't do isn't the motion, but I think you're getting to the point where you need a motion to continue the conversation.
So I have a feeling I know where this is going to go, but I will make a motion that I would make a motion to oppose approving the tenant bill of rights, because I don't think that it's necessary, and I don't think that it will really accomplish anything, and I believe that it's just a time. I just don't think that it's necessary. So my motion would be to not approve the tenant bill.
I think the motion is we bring it to vote, and then like we don't vote to not approve, we vote to, or we move to vote, and then the vote makes the approval or disapproval, right?
Just to clarify, I think the intent would be you make the motion in the affirmative and then you vote against it.
So, Mr. Hutchinson, your motion to vote on the bill.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, I can do that. So I will make a motion to vote on the bill.
Do they have a second?
Second.
Now you can have all the discussion you want.
Okay, then.
Okay. So covered the semantic problems with the language changes. On to the citizen statements. I already addressed some of them. Mr. Mickelson, you asked what is the purpose of the board. I think Linda did a fair job of answering that. Additionally, our mission statement and our strategic plan is part of our minutes and public information, so you can always look at that there. But very broadly, our goal is to inform and advise the Common Council on issues pertaining to rental housing in the city of Oshkosh. You bring up an example of an issue with the inspection to the rental inspection ordinance as a reason why the tenant bill of rights is bad. I don't really understand that argument. I don't see how one court case against the inspection ordinance disproves that there's an imbalance in power, especially given the statistics we learned today, like 5 violations per unit inspected. Next, I don't know, you read a quote that said I have no ideas for policy. I don't remember that particular statement. I think there's probably some important context there, but this is not so much a policy issue, I will admit, more of just a resolution reaffirming that the city is interested in protecting its vulnerable renting population. So then you ask about vulnerable, like who is vulnerable, and some examples of threats. Presently, according to recent statistics, about a fifth of households are reading. Yep. Okay. Thank you. So in December, there was no policy option proposed to assist vulnerable tenants. I will concede that. I have some things to talk about in the other business section. So who is vulnerable? According to recent statistics, about 1/5 of rental tenants are at risk of housing stability issues due to COVID-19, with the majority of those people being low income and minorities, according to at least national metrics. Additionally, I mean, we know that 60% of the evictions that take place in Winnebago County take place in Oshkosh. That comes out of this meeting just a few minutes ago. You want examples of actual threats? We've had in the past such examples provided in these meetings. One that comes to mind is a letter from a somewhat prominent landlord in the campus area, explaining that if they let in the inspectors or called them, that the tenant would be fined for these types of activities. We have several other examples of not only like that letter, which attorney Eric Forsgren told us was problematic to say the least in terms of tenant rights. We've seen information about, from like landlords contacting tenants to tell them how to spend, that they must spend their stimulus money on rent or else suffer consequences. I can personally attest to, as well, being harassed by certain landlords in town for standing up for tenant rights as well. So there's at least some specific examples. I think the data is there. I think the examples have been brought up in past meetings. If you have specific questions, I can try to address them. And so to respond to the idea that it is unnecessary, I disagree. First, the imbalance in power is clear. Like, landlords have more allies at the state level than tenants do, and that there's a pretty clear movement towards law changes which preference the landlord at the state level. That's been empirically true recently. Additionally, we see widely inconsistent application of not application, but wide varying interpretations of what certain landlords are allowed to do in the city versus what they're not allowed to do. And other research would indicate that all of these threats are exacerbated by COVID-19. If the argument is that the bill itself does nothing to prevent these, I would say yes, probably, except for make the rights of tenants more visible, which could potentially empower them to act on, for their own benefit. So that's my piece.
Yeah, I get my main point is that I don't know what first, I'm not exactly sure how it's to be used. I think that what happens is if it gets approved at the board level, then it goes to the council approves it, and then I'm not sure what happens to it then. I mean, what is it? It's a resolution, and then so I'm just wondering, how many people are actually how many tenants are actually going to be aware of this, and how much is it actually going to help, and for all the time that we've spent on it, and then the time that the council is going to spend on it for information that's readily available. If you just Google my tenant rights in Wisconsin, there's some flyers that come up. But that's my opinion. I've said it probably didn't say it this way last time, but that's my opinion. I'm stating it now. If you are going to pass it, there are a couple of typos that you probably want to change. Under security deposit, it says less charges, and I think that's supposed to be charged damages. And then under the last E under section 2, it says tenants have the right to remain in their dwelling during national or state eviction moratoriums. I don't know that that's exactly true. I mean, obviously, if somebody commits a crime in their unit, they can still be evicted. So I think, and there's an in missing between remain and there. So I just don't know that that's 100% true. And then The last item under tenants in Oshkosh can find additional resources at the Rental Housing Advisory Board, not Inspection Board. Just a typo there. So I still remain opposed to this and I will not vote for it. But if you are going to approve it, then I would suggest those changes be made.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Noted. Do we need to take it? Well, we have to vote on it now that the motion's been made. So if we vote on it, can we vote with the caveat that like those typos are fixed, or do we have to take it till next
No,
time?
we can fix those typos.
Can I make one comment, please?
Yes.
I think having a Bill of Rights for tenants is important. That can be put on paper and given to people. The most vulnerable people, when we say poor, we mean poor, which means they don't have Wi-Fi. They might not have a computer. A lot of people wind up going to the library if they can get there to use a computer. But those who are impoverished are truly that. So they don't have Wi-Fi. A lot of them don't have a computer. So it's not as easy as clicking a button for many vulnerable people. And so that's important to note. And a lot of people who haven't worked with vulnerable people don't even know what that means, or know that it means there might not be milk in the fridge, or may not be a stitch of gas in the car to even go to the library, might not even have a car to get to the library. So those details are important. And when we're talking about rental housing and vulnerable people, it's important to know what exactly that means. That means they can't afford what you and I can afford. And so I just wanted to say that giving somebody a flyer with a Bill of Rights on, or having it at the Salvation Army or at St. Vinny's and other resource facilities as a handout is an important thing. So
The state has a very good handout already that covers what's in there. I think it's important that that get distributed. There are times when people sign a lease, I actually give them the state's handout that covers landlord-tenant rights. And it's a really good little brochure. And it is available through the state free of charge.
okay, but let me say this.
Linda, if you're printing it out, if you're printing out the Bill of Rights, you can print out that little handout and give them that. And that little handout has more information in it than this Bill of Rights does. And it also has in there what the landlord's rights are, in case, so that the tenant should know what the landlord's rights are as well, like 12-hour notice, and well, maybe that's in this Bill of Rights. But anyway, all of those things are outlined, and as those laws change, that automatically gets updated by the state. And so we don't have to go through this every time there's a law change or a rule change. So that's why I think that this is redundant. And I think that the time that one of the problems with some of these boards at the city is that it takes up staff times that, you know, Alan and everybody else could be working on other very important things that have to be done in the city. But we're taking up their time as we're trying to debate this thing, which I believe is redundant and which could be solved much easier and much quicker by simply printing out that already state printed handbook. And I understand that people don't have access to it, but they're not going to have access to this Bill of Rights either. So somehow we have to print that out and get that to them. So why not just print out something that's already been published?
Are you volunteering to distribute those then?
No, but I'm not volunteering to distribute the Bill of Rights either. Linda is. Linda's volunteering to distribute the Bill of Rights. So I'm just saying, rather than distribute a small 1-page or 2-page thing, whatever we have, why not distribute the 3- or 4-page thing that the state already has developed?
I don't see why one precludes the other, but I do understand that, yes, there is redundancy built into the resolution, in part because, as I've been arguing, I think it's important for the city to make a clear statement that renters have rights too.
Yes, and when a landlord hands a tenant their, the rights and responsibilities, I'm sure it's about the responsibilities, okay? And when a landlord, and so it's the landlord's rights and responsibilities, the tenant's rights and responsibilities. I'm sure that tenant is more not focused on the rights written there. They're more focused on, okay, these are my responsibilities and these are what the landlord expects of me because the landlord's giving this to me. So the tenants need something just for them, because they're important. So that's all I'll say.
Can I ask, maybe Mr. Davis?
Turn off the utilities, lock you out of your apartment, or use force to remove
Mickelson, out of order.
That's not about.
Oh, can I just ask Mr. Davis, the city's perspective, kind of what the plan would be if, say, this were approved? How would this be used compared to kind of the state's Bill of Rights?
Well, it would certainly be forwarded to council before it would have to be adopted by council. And then typically there's a discussion with council and staff afterwards of how this would be distributed. Typically we get Oshkosh Media Services involved and there's news releases and copying that would be done. Beyond that, I'm only speculating. That's just based on history.
All right. Here is kind of where I'm at then. If we can perhaps come to an agreement as a board as to some approach to perhaps distribute the existing the existing pamphlet has been demonstrated, has been shown. I think we hand out those pamphlets ourselves at the farmers market and things like that, so I can speak to the quality of it, right? If we can come to an agreement as a board as to some, perhaps a push to get that information out there, either agree to distribute it places, maybe contact Oshkosh Media and start, getting some potentially like broadcasts or something like that together, just to push the information out there. I would be willing to concede, withdraw the motion, withdraw the bill.
So can we add that as a, piece on our action plan then to make it official? Like if we're
I think
gonna
that we can put that under other business, I think, but if we can agree now that that would be a viable alternative, I will withdraw the bill now.
So let me understand this correctly. You're talking about the document that the landlords give out, landlord's rights, responsibilities, and tenant rights, responsibilities. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that document comes from the state. Much of what is in the Tenant Bill of Rights is a reiteration of those things. If we can make if we can decide that we will engage in some sort of public information campaign in order to promote this document, promote these rights that already exist, I will withdraw the motion, thereby saving council and staff's time and avoiding redundancies and avoiding hurt feelings over language choices.
I'm all for that. I really think that having everybody, the landlords and the tenants alike, understanding what the rights of the tenants are and what the rights of the landlords are, and getting that information out via social media, via social service agencies, I think that that's a great idea, and I'm all for doing that and handing out those pamphlets at the farmers markets and putting it on our website and doing all those kinds of things, because I think it's like Don said, it's a handy booklet to understand, for everybody to understand, because there's a lot of, I would say, mom and pop landlords, myself included, a lot of times that don't do enough of this to fully understand all the rules. And so getting that out there, I think is really important and valuable. So I'm 100% in support of that.
Mr. Lord, Mr. Gulan.
I agree with Todd 100%.
Question.
Yes.
So, since this is something really important, is this something we can start working on at our very next meeting then?
I don't see why not. Next item is other business. So once we finish up here, we can add that to the next
Agenda.
to the next agenda, amending the strategic or the action plan to include this public information campaign on everyone's rights and responsibilities.
Well, I've never seen the booklet, so.
It's the same one we've used in the past. Like the one we hand out at the farmer's market and things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Okay, I guess I'll go find it.
All right. Can I just withdraw or do we have to vote?
You're really testing my knowledge of rules of order, but I believe the sponsor can withdraw resolution prior to vote. So
in order to avoid
people agree with that, I don't want to do anything the board doesn't want me to do. It's your meeting actually, but I think that's what I've seen happen in other cases.
In order to avoid redundancy, unnecessary expenditure of staff and council time, and to avoid the personal threats and intimidation I would see likely as a result of further sponsoring this bill, I will withdraw. Respectfully, under the auspices that this board will come together to actually execute a public information campaign to the benefit of both landlords and tenants.
So noted.
Groovy. Comments, discussion? As for Mr. Lord's input directly, I don't hear any response. Okay. On to the final business then, which is new business or other business. So on the next agenda, we will discuss a public information campaign. So I would like you all to, obviously we know some of the things we're going to include, such as that pamphlet from the state, but any specific ideas you have for distribution, so locations, events, that type of thing, as well as other, if you want to got ideas for videos or I don't know, anything else we can do, consider those for next time. Additionally, we were invited to sit out at the farmer's market again this year. I am not sure when that kicks off, but in the past we've done, one farmer's market a month where we sit out and talk to people and hand out literature and stuff. Margie Davis emailed me this morning about that. I responded we'd probably be interested. I am usually the one sitting out there, so I'm interested at least. So if y'all are too, that would, does anyone object to participating in the farmer's market, I guess? Cool. So I will email Margie then when we're done here and confirm that we'd like some dates, and then I will get those to this board when I have them. The other thing that important, the most important thing then that I want to bring up for other business, I don't know if you had a chance to look at kind of the outline of the message I want to send to Mr. Roloff, but Mr. Roloff asked for input from the boards and commissions on how monies from the federal government should be expended. I did some research and put together a list of recommendations, which of course I don't have the physical copy in front of me, but basically these things include the establishment of a fund for rental assistance. Now, given that there's the state one, this might also be redundant, but as we know, time and money runs out. The establishment of a tenant legal assistant fund to help those that are being like unfairly evicted during COVID, help their representation in court. Having a lack of representation for tenants is a major aspect of the power imbalance, which always benefits landlords and never benefits tenants. Additionally, second. I mentioned coupling the monies with other support services. So this includes things like the energy assistance that Lou Shearwood, that AdvoCap deals with, and things of that nature. Analyzing and targeting the most at-risk populations, which we can know, or which tend through metered analysis to be low-income and minority people. And we also need to prioritize the so-called mom and pop landlords. They are most vulnerable and the most affected, like at risk of being affected by COVID. And I'm sure all of the landlords in the group here were just as outraged as I was to learn that like the state Republicans intend that money to go to big time corporate landlords rather than the mom and pop landlords that represent the vast majority of property or of housing providers in Oshkosh. Isn't that right, Don? Can anyone? Okay. So I also have some as well as the creation of local mediation services to help keep people in their homes. I also include a list of non-funding recommendations for things that can be done to address housing during the pandemic. This includes prohibiting like late fees and fines for things like back rent accrued during the emergency. Make sure like the tenant legal services fits into that as well. Expunge eviction records accrued during the pandemic, because many of them were or when evictions happen during the pandemic, the research indicates it can be unfair, especially given the lack of representation that some tenants have. The Conservative Pacific Legal Fund recommends exploring opportunities for tax credits, tax breaks, and mortgage forbearance for property owners, focusing on, again, the mom and pop providers, the ones that need it most. So I don't know, I put all my links and my recommendations in the email I sent you all. If you have questions or comments, if you'd like to add anything, I would hear that. I'm mostly just interested if, we want to send this to Mr. Roloff as a group, or if I'm going to do this like rogue. So
I just wanted to comment. I think that first paragraph, it mentions the current moratorium only applying to housing providers accepting federal funding. I think that was for the CARES Act, the federal eviction moratorium that ended, I think, in September. This current CDC eviction moratorium does not only apply to those accepting federal funding. So just a quick edit there.
Okay, sure.
Another thing so Don and I are both part of a group, the eviction prevention group, and something that actually we had our meeting just before this, something that came up, and that is the Housing Authority is looking at potentially adding a position, something about like an eviction prevention specialist, someone who can kind of help both tenants and the housing authority kind of navigate how to avoid evictions. So they brought up the need for that kind of role within the larger community, kind of a navigator role, someone who can float between different housing providers, provide assistance both to property owners and tenants to try to, as sort of an eviction diversion program, something that can help walk through what are the things that we can do before we get to the point of an eviction. What are the resources available? And for the tenants who maybe an eviction has been filed, they get a notice. You know, this came up. A lot of people don't realize you get that notice. That doesn't, if you haven't had a court date yet, that doesn't necessarily mean you've officially been evicted. It's just that start of the process. So, and they raised up the need for some sort of role within the community to help people navigate those options. I don't know if that's something that's allowable in this funding, but they asked that we bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, if I was reading the Treasury Department's statement on it, right, like it broadly applies to maintaining housing stability, which I think keeping people in their homes is the best way to do that. There's going to be, like Mr. Roloff mentioned specifically, that like Hints and Schra are talking a lot about homelessness in Oshkosh. We need to understand the best way to prevent homelessness is to keep people in their homes right now. And that means helping with rental assistance and avoiding eviction when possible.
Just as a point of order, I hate to do it again, but if you're going to be asking for support for something, it's not on the agenda for any kind of vote at this point. So we could certainly add it in June, and I don't know if any decisions are being made by June, but we could certainly include this on an agenda item to actually get support one way or the other.
Right.
Squash the conversation, but it's not on the agenda.
You're right. I don't. Well, here's the thing, though. I think like June will be too late for deciding how we want to get in Mr. Roloff's ear like as soon as possible. So I guess I will just announce that I'm drafting a letter to send to Mr. Roloff, including these recommendations. If you have other recommendations or questions about the specifics, or you want to talk about the research, I'm pretty proud of that reference list. So take a look at it. But
and then we can add this June so we can talk at great length about what's included.
Okay. But if you have,
But I do think that if the letter is going to Mr. Roloff now, it should be clear that it's coming from you, Tim, and not from the Housing Advisory Board.
okay, yeah, I mean that was something I wanted to clarify with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This was brought up at the meeting of the chairs of the boards and commissions. So, speaking of that meeting, the mayor wants to know if this date and time, if this meeting time is still good for everybody. Any suggestions for alternative times?
Well, this is good for me, but half the board members aren't here.
We're working on that too.
Yeah, so I guess that's why the time question was made. So for us, we're the ones that say, oh yeah, okay. But the ones that aren't here, that haven't been here for months.
Yeah,
That's actually something I can follow up on. We just
Yes, go ahead.
received a resignation from Ms. DeGroot, and we're expecting something like that from Mr. Garcia as well.
Oh. What do we do in that situation? Do we?
The mayor appoints new members.
Okay.
Well, recommends, and then I think the council approves.
Right.
Okay.
So just like with any other boards and commissions, citizens apply and then go through the approval process.
Yep. Since all those positions will be filled by the end of May.
Since we're
Be
talking about
ready.
attendance, when I was looking through the meeting minutes, I noticed that Don and I aren't listed as being present in the last meeting minutes, even though we're listed in the minutes itself, so.
Yeah, I noticed that as you mentioned your misspelling. I said, where's his name on the attendance? Yeah.
Look, there was a lot of technical issues last time, so that might have interrupted that or whatever.
Mhm.
So to summarize, like new or other business, then talk about our public information campaign. We'll welcome our new board members. I will update y'all on the correspondence I have with Mr. Roloff.
And farmers market dates.
And farmers market.
An AdvoCap update.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Ms. Sure will be
And
invited.
all the usual trimmings. So AdvoCap, evictions, inspections,
Housing study update.
musical guests. Usually. The ghost of DMX, maybe. We'll see. All right. Any other new business? Other business? Seeing none, thank you everyone for your attendance and participation. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I move to adjourn. Second.
Okay, so Lindsay and Linda, is anyone opposed?
We still have to take the roll call.
No.
Okay. Go ahead. Roll.
Erickson,
I
Gulan,
Aye.
Hutchison, Javaltis,
Aye.
and Ernst.
Don Lord.
Yeah, did we
Oh,
call?
I didn't know if you were here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm having technical difficulties too sometimes, so yeah, I'm still here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Good day.
spring.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.